That's very saying that. Rick began his career at age 16. He worked with Dows sometimes and covered the Tumultuous Democratic Convention in 1968. Aside from sometimes he's worked at the Chicago Daily News, which no longer exists, but he's presently at the Chicago Tribune, where he's a columnist. He also hosts After Hours with Rick Kogan on HDF Radio, and he's the author of many, many books. So, Rick, good to have you here today, and we'll just jump right into the Q and A. As I mentioned, you were 16 when you started in journalism. Well, what was your first story, and what were newsrooms like back then?
When I was 16, my job was considered running errands for the reporters who were covering the Democratic convention and getting them cigarettes. When speeches started my career, we were at headquarters. It was pretty exciting. My first in the Sun came about because anybody remember Jim Ho, Robert Redford, looking editor of the Chicago. Remember Jim? Did any of you know true? But did any of you can speak with him? No. And there were two there. And we're not totally correct. Jim and my father used to play tennis. And I would drive them to those parts of the Chicago area. And one day Jim said, Rick, how old are you now? I said, well, I'm 16, Mr. Hogan. I just got the driver's license. And he said, why don't you review a book sometimes? Sure, Mr. Hogan. What's the book about? And I remember it. And I don't remember a lot of being 16, but the title of it was written by a woman named Helen Pack. The title of the book was How to Get a Teenage Boy and What to Do with Him When You Get Him. Well, be perfectionist. I hear a teenage boy, I'm nervous today, so let's see what we would have to say. And I must say, I've written thousands, maybe tens of thousands of pieces. It is the single meanest piece I've ever written in my life. I became so close to calling her an idiot in print. That was the first of my many pieces. And then now from there, the last piece I wrote was one about figures. It'll be in Sunday's paper. Yeah, I think of papers, it's online. And I'm still confused by the whole online and in print stuff. I prefer print. It is about Amelia Earhart. Because there's a new, wonderful new book out about Amelia Earhart and the jerk who married her and I think caused her to disappear. He was a promoter. His name was Putnam, and it was about love with them. But the reason I wrote about it is not only is this new book coming out that sort of details her relationship with this guy, there is once again the notion that someone has found the wreckage of her plane. And there is an excursion going from from San Francisco to find or try to attempt to lift the plane up from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. It stuns me that this woman's name is so durable. That was 88 years ago. I guess it's told me I should have died when I was 16 or maybe. So they might help us all back and stuff. Do not hesitate during this whole thing to ask me questions from the audience too, if you want to know. I can be very frank now. I don't think I can be fired for the truth. But I'm afraid, though, in many ways, I'm likely to turn out the lights of the paper, and I think that will be a tragic thing. The Tribune has moved in the last Oh, let's get it this way. The Tribune was in that beautiful, magnificent building, at Michigan Avenue. Then we were purchased, and the building was purchased, and it's now million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, $8 million. Videos. They did a nice job of refurbishing it, and all the people I know, some people bought in there, and every single one of them, all they want to know is, oh, congratulations, glad you have $8 million within the Tribune Tower there. Can you come over? Oh, I'd love to come over and see your apartment. They don't care about me. Can you like show us where Royco's office used to be? Sort of came in sort of destroyed. Uh, but then we moved to the Prudential building with very nice offices. And then we were purchased again. And now these so-called Tribune offices are on a nondescript uh, building, I suppose an office building, kitty corner from the Sears Tower. And nobody goes in the office, which is kind of shattered the notion of being a newspaper man or a newspaper woman. In this town, there's no community. No one goes anymore to the Billy Goat, where we all used to, not all of us, but a large number of us used to go. When there were at the time, anyway, you all know where the Billy Goat is. Yeah. That's why, see, I was such an idiot. People usually go out and make speeches, and they get paid to make speeches and stuff. I'm going to give you presents for the library here. I'm fighting for this. This is my history of the Billy Goat. This is my sort of somewhat biography of Ann Landers. I'm giving these to you because I think they're both very good books. But at one time, the Billy Goat underneath in a subterranean place was stumbling distance from four newspapers, Tribune and the American slash Today, and where Trump Tower is now the New News. And everybody used to go there. And it was kind of a safe ground for reporters. We could get your own in there, but mostly because you get money about editors who went to the paper who say rarely get down to this place. Uh, but look, keep me on track. When you're a radio star. I'm assuming that many of you read Mike, maybe not in these times, but certainly there's Tribune. And I don't know if you, as do I, consider him the best columnist in the industry at this time. I would so love, a lot of reasons I love to have Mike around. He was also a very good golfer, too, and belonged to Sunset Ridge, a couple other places. And really, I played with Mike out here, I don't remember who was the member who allowed us to be guests, but this is when we played here. We started to call ourselves America's guests. If we made it and played on Valencia, we could go anywhere. Uh, and the reason he became a good golfer is when he was working nightside on the old Daily News. One of his buddies said, "You play golf?" And I said, "No, I don't." So you can have a part-time job editing. Medina Country Club puts out a sort of newsletter every month. And if you do the newsletter, you can play golf for free as much as you like. The night was pretty nice then. That's how Royco became a good golfer because he literally played Medina. And how many of you play golf in here? If you're playing Medina, you're going to think it is wise to practice. You're not just going to go out there and shoot. And that's how you became a good golfer. You literally play 4 or 5 days a week. Uh, so Mike used to go every evening after finishing his column to the Billy Goat to unwind. So there are a lot of people in their homes everywhere to eat and drink. when Mike moved to the tech, his frequency of Billy Goat became slightly less. But one day he calls me, what are you doing? Gonna drive home? You're okay, you're finish your column, yeah, come on, let's go, drink Billy Goat. We go down to the Billy Goat, it's like 3 in the afternoon. And we sit, there's a little section of the Billy Goat, if you're from being there, can't call Wise Guy's Corner for reasons that escape me. It's right at the curve bar. So like, can I sit down? Bartender's a great guy named Jeff McGill. And he doesn't even ask, he just brings me a bourbon and he brings Mike vodka. Which Mike always said, Mike used to drink scotch, and then when he turned 55, I can't handle it anymore, so he just drink vodka. But that was medium from alcohol. Didn't work. So we're sitting there, and no one else is in the place. This is a pre-tourist days, and sitting down the other end of the bar is a kind of construction worker looking kind of guy watching a Cubs game, TV. The minute Mike walks in, he turns to us and goes, "Oh my God, look at this. Big shots here. Big Mike Rico. So thrilled to be in the same company as," and I'm not doing this guy justice, he was smashed, doing Big Mike Rico. Oh, I can't believe I'm seeing him. And Jeff goes over to the bartender and goes, "You want to get rid of him? And he's been here all day. And it's something funny. I think he lost his girlfriend or something." And Mike, uncharacteristic of that, the guy goes on. I remember he goes on for, we had 3 drinks each. And he goes on for the entire thing. And it's getting uglier and uglier. Oh, Mr. Royko, you look so much balder in person than you do in your picture in the newspaper. And at this point, I'm thinking, get out of here, Jeff. This is going to be trouble. All of a sudden, the guy gets up and starts to walk toward us. And as I did for my entire history with Mike, I would get up and get in between what I assumed would be potential trouble. Because if Mike gets in a barroom fight, it's going to be meat for Walter Jacobson on perspective. He's going to rip it on TV. And it's going to be over. I never wound up getting a fight. We stopped and I came over and the guy's still doing as he's walking. "Big man, big shot, Mr. Boyko. Big man thinks he's a star." And I said, "Look, please, leave him alone. Any trouble?" He goes, "Yeah, you can possibly give me an autograph." I said, "I tell you, you're getting insulting." He goes, "Oh, I live my own really nice. Bob really thinks he's great." And Mike, here's one of the great, and I don't know what this is for, but one of the great insights of my life is that when Mike, after he turned 55 and began drinking vodka, after 2 vodkas, he would begin to speak in a British accent. I never discovered why, because when I asked him when he was doing it, "Why are you doing this? Doing what?" The next day, I said, "What are you following this British accent? What are you talking?" So it's one place very district. So Mike says, "Okay, what's your uncle's name?" He goes, "Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob is this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so mean, Mom." He says to Jeff, "Jeffrey, my good man, fetch me a quill and some parchment." Jeff says, you want a pen and a piece of paper?" "Yes, my good man, a quill and parchment for this man." So she print over to the legal bag and a picture. And Blake brings his name, "My good fellow. What is your uncle's name?" "It's Uncle Bob. It's for everything. I can't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm so mean to you. I can't believe you're doing this for me." His name, my good man, took a lot, Mr. Crickle, took a lot. Now take this and be gone. He gives his kid the bag. Before he does, I grab the bag, read it, give it to the kid. He reads it, says, "Oh my God, Mr. Ricker, thank you so much. I can't believe you did this for me." He goes, "No, it's fine. Be gone." So I look at the bag, but he wrote. And Mike was a great writer, and I do believe these are the best words he ever wrote, given the circumstances. "Dear Uncle Bob, your nephew is an asshole. And regards, Mike." That is the writing genius. Capture. Capture. Mike died way too young. I would love to know what he has to say about, especially Brandon Johnson, so-called mayor of the city of Chicago. Do any of you live in Chicago? There's some lucky kind of mayor you have a mayor. Who's a mayor of Forest? Brandon Cat. Sorry. Someone good. Yeah. He gets $10 a year. Really? I think that. Wow. Wow. Ask me some questions. I will. Good. So you too, please. Yeah. Well, you answered my question beautifully. I don't even remember what the question was. That was a great answer. But I tend to be on. Don't be in shit. Your parents were both journalists. Yes. And you just mentioned Royko. And who was the biggest influence on your journalism career? It was your parents, maybe it was Royko, maybe it was someone else. I was really, really lucky. Uh, my father was a big Depression era Phi Beta Kappa from the University of Chicago. Why? 3 year Phi Beta Kappa working midnight to 8 for the City News Bureau, which was kind of the training ground for journalists, while living in, this was in the 30s, while living in Rogers Park. He was incredibly well respected. He wrote a lot of books about the history of Marshall Field and Company. He wrote a couple books about the scallywags at City Hall. And he was ever giving. And our living room was in Old Town. I have a younger brother, Mark, who's 16 months younger than I. And it was always filled. He was a newspaperman too, but he was always filled with writers and other artists. My mother had worked for the papers for a little while and then became the head of public relations for the Art Institute. So we had all sorts of, it was just wild seeing my brother. And frankly, when we were really younger, our bed had a railroad apartment in our bedroom. It was down the hall. The noises from the living room were almost terrifying, but the clinking of glasses, and people yelling and people screaming, and every night about 10, 11 o'clock, my mother would come in and say, "Come on, you boys, get up, and let's say goodnight to all the nice people." Hey, the nice people were not leaving. Uh, and we walk into this room and literally filled with smoke. It was like something going to a distant planet, filled with smoke and people kissing on the fireplace, roaring. And we'd be in, cowboy pajamas. Say goodnight to all the nice people. Say goodnight to all the nice people. And I remember one memory I had of those encounters. They were relatively, they were every night parties, but once every couple of weeks. Is the first woman and or girl, or boy, to ever kiss me on the lips was Jim O's first wife, Alice Harlan. Later, she married Michael Arnold from the New Yorker. And I told her this 30 years later, and she was so sweet. All she said was, "Oh, Rick, I so remember that evening." But the people who live here are people like Mort Saul, who's a great friend of my dad's, and Studs Terkel, who's a great friend of my dad's, and Mike Royko. So I was not intimidated by these people, and not intimidated by celebrities. So it enabled me to learn from people like Mike, people like Studs. You know, the thing with Studs, he never thought anybody, people were accused of, you just interview these ordinary people. No. Studs' theory was no one was ordinary, that everybody had a story to tell. That's what made Division Street America. That's what won the Pulitzer Prize for the Good War, and a number of other books. And I remember my first book, when I wrote with my father, was Pictorial History of Chicago, from Yesterday Chicago. The first book I wrote on my own was after I joined I worked for the Daily News, then the Daily News folded, and then went to work at the Sun Times. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the dream job for any 25-year-old reporter in the history of newspapers. When the editor said, do you ever go, Rick, to taverns and nightclubs? And I said, yes, sir, I do. Go with my friends here. So, well, you're going to become the new nightclub art critic. And you pay for my drinks? Oh, of course. It's called the expense meeting. And so I did that. I created there was a character called Dr. Nightlife, and wrote this kind. It's collected in a book. The book is incredibly hard to get. It was published by Chicago Review Press when I was 27 years old. And I recently saw it available on a website called Alibris, which sells rare books, for $7,000. And the only regret I have, I don't have a pile of books. It originally sold for $10. And of the 70 places reviewed in the book, maybe two of them still exist. But Studs had me on, because he was my father's good friend, he had me on his radio show when I wrote that book. And this is always, it's a lesson that always informed, and I think I was doing it before, but it's informed everything I've done since, is that we're on the show, right? And Studs thought I might have a stroke or something that imitate Studs. Right? This is a fantastic book. You're gonna read from that area. You bring up the Earl of Old Town. Say this, let's hear a song. Steve Goodman, who played there. Rick, you're right about Ricardo's. That's where I met your parents, and he reads a bit of whatever. And after the show, the Harlem show, I'm weak in the knees. I being flattered, honored, in this walking out of the studio. I said, Rick, was that okay? Was that okay? Like that. It was unbelievable. It was remarkable. What's the secret? Read the book. Read the book. I have never interviewed anybody without reading their book, listening to their music, because it is so much easier. And I think I get more out of it. Instead of saying, so, tell me what your book is about. It's not a question. I only know 20 minutes on the radio and you learn nothing. Nothing. I learned a lot from Ann Landers too. This nice clothes during this one. Abby, her name was Abby Letter. And in the later years, I was the editor for a while of the tempo section, feature section of the Chicago Tribune. And I would see him. I know Abby since I was a kid because she and my parents were great friends. She got the job in 1955. She was living here at 1,000 Lakeshore Drive with a man named Jules Lederer. with her husband. He was in the process of founding Avis Rent-A-Car. He did very well. Abby was being left behind. She had once worked in politics in Wisconsin, and so she went tried to get a job in local politics, and she wound up through some connections seeing Jake Harvey, one of the great political bosses in the history of this town. She went to see him, and that was this being very, very stylish. Went to see him, and Harvey told me to go and look at her and said, "You get into politics in this town, little lady, you're going to wind up at the bottom of the Chicago River." So she heard that they were having a contest to replace the original landlord. She was a nurse named Ruth Crowley. Epi was among 5 women given a test. My mother was also one of these women. My mother always claimed that she did not get the job of landlady because she was too funny and too amusing. There may have been maybe other reasons that happened. The questions were asked 3 questions. One was interfaith marriage. Interfaith question. My daughter is Catholic and she was very issues. The other was about, sorry, it was about an apple tree that hung over someone's yard, and that someone had taken some of those apples to make a pie, and the person with the tree wanted to know if she should have half the pie. Abby was pretty connected to some Democratic politics. She did something that was very novel at the time. She called some experts to figure this out. The marriage expert she called was Father Ted Esper, president of Notre Dame University. The person she called to about the apple and the apple pie was William Douglas of the Supreme Court Justice. She answered the questions, and she got the job. And she became, at the time, when it was still in early 1955 paper, but at the time the advice business was fading away from papers, and lenders resurrected it. She eventually ran. I would argue that she was the most well-read person in the history of newspapers. She was carrying in something in the neighborhood. There aren't even 1,100 papers left now. Her sister, of course, whose nickname was Popo, started the Dear Abby column. So Abby, and was at the time, quite a time, she called, at that time she called me and said, "Rick, it's Abby." The funny thing is, everybody I associated with has this distinctive voices. And if I could make any money imitating Las Vegas, hi, Rick Kogan, the famous Studs Turtle in first name, but the famous Ann Landers first name were Gus. So she, excuse me for a second. We could relive these weird page times. I don't do this much talking. Normally, not interviewed, but I hear people. Excuse me, a little hoarse. So Eddie calls and says, "Rick, you know what the Dennis Gosselin, another editor, he's leaving. I wonder could you become my editor?" Well, sure. You're the most syndicated person in history. She had an office at the paper at the time in Florida, Raleigh. Assistants, because she got constantly gave her 5,000 letters a day. And these are not emails, these are letters. And she literally answered, unless they were written in blood or something, she answered that she and her staff answered every one. she would answer for three in front of them. And I said, well, do I have to ask? No, I don't need a lot of work. I think we'll probably not those characters. And it was for a newspaper. So I started doing that. And it was an incredible experience for me because she really was, in any list of which they publish every year in the States, the most admired women in the world. It was always like Mother Teresa, Queen Elizabeth, and Landis. I'm dead serious. Every year after year after year. And her editing her column was absolutely almost zero work. I would maybe update the name of, change. Well, George Jessel to Jay Lemmings. The way she said, well, how could I pay? I said, it's just an honor for me. You don't have to pay me. Well, if we go to dinner, I go, sure, I'd love to go to dinner. The first time I went to dinner, she lived at 209 East Lakeshore Drive. It was a beautiful place with a beautiful view. And the most unique sculpture I've ever seen. It was a bust of Jack Kennedy, about this big, made of clay and what do you call those things? Paper clips. And it was, it's nuts, but it was literally beautiful. It was really beautiful. So I go to her apartment for this first date, and I standing in front of two women and smoking a cigarette as I did in those days. And I'm also, the guards come out, the doorman come out and go, man, you better flap that coat. She hates smoking her coat. She does. So I stand out there, smoke a cigarette, flap my coat in the 20-degree weather. Go upstairs. She answers the door. I'm Rick, could you just, make yourself at home? And I'm on the phone with Al Gore. Well, of course, you're in Landers. She says on the phone, she comes out. I said, what do you want? Well, he wants to know what, I can't remember who he was running it. Someone had admitted to using, to using cocaine once. And she was, I'm fascinated with that. I told him not to worry. If he'd never done cocaine, everything would be fine. Then she asked me one question, the answer to which I will never know as long as I live. She was, is it cold out? I said, yes, it's pretty cold. She then says, well, Rick, the ink or the ermine? And a loss. In a total loss, I could say the ermine. We go to a restaurant in the Drake Hotel, which is called, I don't know anymore, called the International Club. Where we sit together. So Miss Landers, we sit down, sure, name flag under the table. A very nice restaurant. Uh, she and everybody way better. Very private club. And Abby was in about 70. She is about by 20 years the youngest person there, which came to imagine what people thought I was. But we're sitting there, Rick, I want you to tell me some more about this coaching thing. What is it? What is it you'd like to know? Now, have you ever done this? And I sadly had to say, yeah, only once, so that's the only ones I did a long time ago. How do you do it? So I'm, so it's fair. I unscrew a salt shaker from down and take out a credit card and start making lines of coaching. She's fascinated. What are you doing? I'm making, I think this is how most people take cocaine heavy. They make these lines of cocaine, lines of cocaine. And then what? Well, then they take, most people take $100 bill and wrap it up like this, and then they inhale it. Well, show me. And not I'm afraid that I'm going to inhale Oh, we so many parents. Sorry, this is the downhill for me. And I stop and half the people have stopped their screens coming through their method on it. I'm happy we should be doing this. What do you think they think? I go, many of you think I'm doing cocaine at a table with amateurs. Well, good. Good for my image. Good for me. So I didn't do it, show her do it. But I learned of that spirit, she was never, and she didn't need to be, she could have had one of her assistants writing the advice columns. She was still, and she wasn't a blunt journalist or a trained journalist either. Uh, she was interested, she was curious. And if anything, and long way of answering your question, that it's curiosity that compels me. And the reason I do a radio show it's kind of an extension of graduate school or something. I'm learning. If someone sends me a book, and I would sort of, if I wasn't doing the show, I'd sort of be able to find the time not to find the time to read the book. So it really does kind of enrich my life. And being a reporter has also enriched my life. Also, this week I reviewed a book about Mike Tyson, which is, for those of you who care, one of the most amazing uh, pieces of biography that I've ever read. And I always thought Tyson was German, and it changes my mind. It is like something out of Charles Dickens that this guy is even alive. It's some kind of strange miracle. Just resting my voice.
I'm just going to ask one more question, then we'll open it up to everybody. So, what you've conducted thousands of interviews, I'm guessing. What were some of your most memorable interviews, and why?
Paul Newman, just because he was the most astonishing looking human being I have ever sat across from. He was unbelievably nice, but I could not get over what he looked like. And it was, I mean, it was almost scary to me, but he could not have been nicer. Another terrifying one I was working for WBEZ at the time, daily radio show, and I interviewed a woman who had, in the space of a year, had 4 children lost to gun violence. And it was beyond children to me. And and the fact that she was surviving was pretty amazing. There was one, let me say one more thing. I've interviewed a lot of celebrities, a lot of authors, many of the people I interviewed I really liked, but for a while, after I stopped being tempted, they said, "No, I can write it. No, it's okay." I thought, uh, slightly longer story, because when I was editor, I had assigned to one of my reporters a story about indoor pools in Chicago. Nice story, should be fun. He writes a story, in the story is, then the rooftop pool at the Intercontinental is wonderful for children, also longer. I look at this guy's name is Glenn Jeffries. And I said, "What do you mean rooftop pool dinner?" This is when the turkey was next to the Intercontinental. That pool on the 12th floor of the Intercontinental is where I learned to swim on the 12th floor, which is not on the roof. And I said, why are you running I said, "What is this? The 12th floor." Well, I didn't go see it. Some information from the internet, and this told me something is going to be very wrong in this world sooner or later. Uh, so when I stopped being the editor of Tempo, and they said, write a column, but we got to get out of the office. I'm going to get out of the office. And I got this photographer, Charles Osgood, who was on staff, and said, we're going to write a column every week for the magazine. It's going to be about where are we going to go? I said, we're just going to, you get a camera, I'll get a notebook, and we'll just go somewhere. We'll go back, let's talk about it. I said, we'll find something. This city is interesting enough. If we can't find a column every day, we should get a new job. So one day, it's the middle of winter, driving west on the Eisenhower Expressway, and we just decided to get off in Lexington, shitty neighborhood. And as we're getting off, Charlie was always hungry, always hungry. I gotta get something to eat. There's a man selling peanuts on the exit ramp. It's about 5 different coats selling peanuts, and we stop, and Charlie buys a bag of peanuts for $1. And we start driving away. We both look at each other. We didn't say a word to them. Let's go back and talk to him. So we go back and talk to him. His name is Thomas Gaither. And we said hello, and got very nervous. Like, that be something wrong. But I said, no, me, wrong. What do you want? I said, we just want to know who you are, what you do. He had been selling peanuts at $1 a bag. Remember the $1 a bag? It was the headline of the story was life at $1 a bag. And he told us he'd been selling peanuts on that exit ramp for 35 years. And we said, wow, that's a tough way to make a living. No, sir, some days servers, he called us servers. Some days they're better than others. I'm proud of that, but I have my daughter's doctor. Wow, really? Yeah. She went to she went to college, and to medical school, and I lost my son. He was killed. I'll never miss a day out here. I said, you never missed a day in 35 years. Yes, that's right. Well, there was one day when my daughter was born that I had to leave. I had to leave after advocating from the hospital to see. We have a nice wife. She was a bad, she was not a nice woman. I said, when you raise your daughter, who's not a doctor, all by herself, working on the exit ramp of the Eisenhower Expressway, I'm proud of that too. I'm proud. If she would like me to stop, I'd still do it. And I said, that's what it really, and Charlie and I were all, we're all crying. And we say, but don't you young boys understand it? That some days it gets really cold, but other days the sun shines on me. And that's what keeps me going. I have never, ever forgotten. And if I think, oh man, that waiter wasn't quick enough with the escargot, my day is ruined. It's that kind of thing too. And when I meet people who are really famous, if they act really famous, I don't want anything to do with.
Let's open it up. Who has a question for Rick?
I will answer any question. Worst senator in history.
Must be one question. Well, that's too easy. Yeah. Yes.
That's a good question. I have known Ed for a long time. Not great friends, but he kind of wound onto my dad. My dad was this road in Chicago historian. He was always very nice to me when I was a kid. I've interviewed him a number of times. I absolutely adore his wife and helped start Special Olympics before the Kennedy family wound up. She really is who started the Special Olympics. I think here's the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I grew up on the 43rd, which was famously the ward run by Alderman Patty Chicago, he ready for reform bottler. So the bar of respect I have for all is pretty. One year, to answer your question in a roundabout way, one year Charlie and I outside once, I decided what we should do. Well, I was having an argument with Billy Bob, and I'll back to the Billy Bob. I was having an argument with Billy Bob with Rick Pierce, political, and not arguing, just talking. Rick Pierce, the political editor of the Tribune, one night, and we're sitting there, Sam's hands on her. Looks over and said, these people, they drive us out of business. These people are no good. They're people, blah, blah. We go, what people? We've all done it. They have a no smoking room. They drive me out of business. I go, no, Sam, it won't drive me out of business. They have it in New York, and we find people go. So Ray and I fashion ourselves knowledgeable Chicagoans. I said, how many Aldermen can you name? Can you name all 50? Well, sure. I said, I bet I can too. Together, we could only name 38. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's really interesting. If the political editor, Mr. Chicago historian, can only do this, people just don't know who these people are. So I made the idiotic decision to spend 50 weeks every year interviewing every single one of the aldermen in the city of Chicago. It almost killed me. This is the email I sent out. I see those highlights interview for 500 word story, but it was a nightmare trying to get them to answer and say yes. The idea was to interview the alderman and take a photo in each ward of something the alderman or older woman or now as they call them, people, I don't know what they call them, alders. Something they were really proud of. The first few were a little hard. Yeah, I have a new, there's a new firehouse. Just the first one, let's say, old picture of myself at Burke. I think he's been, as many local politicians have. I think he played the game. I think what he was indicted and convicted of, it's not the first time he took money. I feel bad for anybody in their 70s or 80s who has to go to prison for almost any year to kill somebody, sure. That he got out some quick. He's not well either. So it was a choice between I like him and he didn't hurt me. I know he's part of a bigger problem. But the older I get, better I understand human family. And he failed on a level that I can live with. I'm not going to spin on him if I see him again, when I see him again. I do not believe in dishonesty. I do, however, think Ed was, and I'm not saying, I'm in my 70s now, I don't slow things off, but I think in this case he made a mistake for a driveway. I like Ed Burke, but I think he made a terrible mistake. I don't tell him that to his face. And I think $2 million is not enough. But I could put Brandon Johnson if you let me have to do that. Whatever, right? all, like, and learn this by where you, every passing day, we're all human beings and we're all family. And no one I know has never made a mistake. Yes.
These politicians justify. So Michael Madigan, all the things that he's done, how can he look himself for all the corruption? And the rest of them too. I mean, they're supposed to serve the public and all that.
I think it's interesting. So I'm sorry. How can we, way that's all these things. I have known the penny power. I think the temptation becomes so great, so overwhelming that they lose whatever kind of moral backbone they have. I think, think, let us do that. And plus, the system is created that allows, I think, too many of them to get away with it. That's part of the problem, too. Too many of them can get away with this kind of thing. Daily Solis is, I, I mean, evil is a real, as grandkids, evil is out there, and evil is temptation. And I think many, they're far more than don't get caught. That's what bothers me too. That's what bothers me too.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Rick. This has been
But
fantastic.
you've been a very attentive audience.
So, feel free to come up and talk with Rick if you'd like. Thank you for coming.
Don't forget my personal gift.
Great job. Oh, no, it was good. Oh, it's good. So that Jenny wrote it. So much party. Great. Yeah. Really go good. Yeah, then. Seconds. But the tournaments. Yeah, we really have so that's cool. That's an often. And it's easy. You've done that, but yeah. I mean, it's not you want to return. Oh, it's not. Try to pretend to first.
I know I was because I don't understand their job. Here. Problem is, a lot of radiators to the market. Yeah, and they have to make because she's a real child has I don't it's hard to this era just guys. She laughs. She's praise that I just walking in the about John Celia to read this time. Yeah, I'm sure like yeah. I forget to go without I can't speak everything around. Maybe John speaks here. Yeah.
I know.
Yes, right.
These are things.
Lots of. Yeah. Because they kind of neglects it. It's enough. That's. Here. You're never. You see how many different lives out there. So, they even all of the fears. So, step on the shows. See, we have a really old school. 10 years, and she keep forgetting. And then I'm trying to do before that, so there's a lot of it. But think about it, so stay. And it's so it's probably just that one comment. Yes, and so do you. Right. Yeah. She was a spot. She don't know. In that word, I. They're all there. So she those people use that town. She's very similar. I use it around her. Yeah. Something different. How they are like. You know. And he go there and he asked persons. Without getting our sales. They had a house and he was very good. And it's Alex, you're right.
the oil and she's got like church. But then when I got that, I got that, they can write it down. Now she's drinking much too much, she's got, you know, 17 like that. Cause you want it, actually, like, Russ takes kind of like, social nature. See, I remember in my house, they had right up the 52, yes. So that's always been something, it's like a weaker foundations. So. So that's all not what. It's the same age as 20, or something.